It arrived on a Tuesday, nestled between a utility bill and a flyer for a dental practice. A thin, cheap envelope, the kind they sell in packs of 100 at the dollar store, addressed to Evance in shaky, typewritten capitals. I almost threw it away. Arthur was already out the door, whistling as he usually did, heading to the city for a critical meeting. He kissed me on the forehead, smelled faintly of his usual sandalwood cologne, and the promise of a stable, beautiful future. 20 years we had built that future, brick by emotional brick, and in my mind, it was impermeable. I carried my coffee to the kitchen island, slit the envelope open with a butter knife, and pulled out a single sheet of stark white paper. There was only one sentence, centered perfectly, typed with the heavy, uneven pressure of an old machine. Ask Arthur where the Henderson property mortgage payments are truly going. It's not your future he's building. The world stopped. It didn't crumble immediately. It froze, like a glass statue caught mid-shatter. My first reaction wasn't fear or rage, but a physical nausea so overwhelming I had to lean against the counter, tasting bile. The Henderson duplex was our long-term investment, the jewel in our retirement crown, purchased 10 years ago. It was supposed to fund our daughter's graduate school and eventually our quiet life on the coast. Who would know about it? And why would they send this venom? The anonymous nature was the worst poison, stripping me of the ability to dismiss it immediately as a spiteful competitor or jealous ex. It felt deeply personal, aimed directly at the foundation I believed was unbreakable. I folded the note and pressed it into my palm until the paper cut the skin, needing the pain to confirm that I wasn't dreaming this grotesque intrusion. I spent the rest of the morning trying to mentally incinerate the note. Arthur, my Arthur, was predictable, steadfast, and deeply ethical. He volunteered at the homeless shelter every Thanksgiving. He helped my mother manage her estate after she passed. He was the safe harbor in a turbulent life. This letter had to be a cruel, misinformed joke. But the precision of the detail, the Henderson property, was unsettling. If it had said, ask him about the accounts, I would have laughed. But the property was specific, tangible, and recent enough to matter. I tried to access the online banking statements for the Henderson mortgage, which were usually tied to a dedicated investment account. Oddly, Arthur had switched those statements to paper delivery about 6 months ago, citing cybersecurity risks. At the time, I had nodded, trusting his business acumen implicitly. Now, that memory pricked me like a needle. Throughout the day, the memory of small, previously insignificant moments began to coalesce into something menacing. The weekend trips Arthur insisted on taking alone, always claiming they were essential networking retreats in remote areas. The way he sometimes checked his phone under the table, holding it close to his chest when I entered the room. The sudden, inexplicable need for cash withdrawals from the ATM that he never fully accounted for, usually dismissed as tips for contractors. None of these things individually meant betrayal, but placed against the backdrop of the anonymous note, they painted a chilling mosaic. By the time Arthur returned that evening, smelling faintly of scotch and success, the paper cut in my palm had dried, but the wound in my heart had started to bleed internally. I couldn't confront him yet. I needed proof, because accusing him based on a cowardly, typewritten note felt too destructive to risk. My initial investigation had to be clandestine, stealthy. I knew Arthur would sense the shift in the air if I started asking pointed questions about financial security or the investment portfolio. So I went analog. I couldn't crack his new password for the dedicated investment account, but I still had the original paper files we kept in the basement safe, the safe that housed the deeds, insurance policies, and original purchase agreements. Late that night, while Arthur slept the deep, peaceful sleep of a man with no worries, I descended into the cold, concrete cellar. The files were exactly where they should be, dusty and labeled meticulously. The Henderson property deed was there, listing Arthur and myself as joint owners. The initial financing paperwork was also correct. But when I looked for the updated mortgage schedule or the recent tax assessments, they were missing. Not just misplaced, but deliberately removed. This confirmed the note's insinuation. Something related to the ongoing payments or the property's current status was being actively hidden from me. It hit me then that the note wasn't just warning me about a minor financial irregularity, it was screaming about a fundamental deception. The only way to know the truth was to see the property itself. I hadn't been to the Henderson duplex in years. It was an hour's drive away, nestled in a small, affluent community outside the metro area. Arthur always handled the oversight, explaining that the tenants preferred dealing directly with him. I told Arthur the next morning I was going on a spa day with an old friend. He smiled, kissed me goodbye, and told me to enjoy the pampering. That smile, in retrospect, was the most damning evidence of all. The drive felt like traversing a time warp. I was Eleanor, wife of 20 years, driving toward an investment, yet I felt like a spy creeping toward enemy territory. The neighborhood where the Henderson property was located was quiet, tree-lined, and decidedly residential, far different from the bustling commercial district Arthur had vaguely described it being near. As I pulled slowly onto Henderson Lane, my heart rate hammered against my ribs. And there it was, the duplex. It wasn't the anonymous, bare-bones investment property I imagined. It was painted a cheerful pale blue, with overflowing window boxes and a perfectly manicured lawn. There were children's toys scattered near the porch, a bright red wagon, a soccer ball, and a small wooden swing set bolted securely into the ground of the yard belonging to the second unit. My breath hitched. This wasn't a commercial rental. This was a home. I parked a block away, watching the property from the relative safety of my darkened SUV. The minutes stretched into an eternity of quiet, suffocating dread. Then the side door opened. A woman stepped out, slender, with rich auburn hair pulled back into a hasty ponytail, wearing faded denim and a soft sweater. She looked late 30s, comfortably domestic. She bent down and smiled at someone inside, and then a little boy, maybe 10 years old, bounded out after her. He was laughing, chasing a yellow butterfly that had just fluttered past the rose bushes. The sound of his pure childish laughter sliced through me. Then he turned his face fully toward the afternoon sun. He had Arthur's eyes, the exact shade of deep hazel, the slight upward tilt at the corners. The recognition was instantaneous, visceral, and absolute. This wasn't an investment property. This wasn't even an affair. This was a parallel life, a second family, conceived and maintained under the same roof of lies that sheltered me. I didn't drive away immediately. I couldn't. I sat there until the sun began to dip, casting long, melancholy shadows across the street. The boy, Arthur's son, started kicking the soccer ball, and the woman, his mother, clapped and cheered. 20 years of commitment, loyalty, and partnership reduced to a theatrical performance, a masterful deception designed to keep me compliant, while he lived a complete, separate reality just an hour away. The sheer logistical effort of maintaining two families for a decade was staggering. The holidays, the birthdays, the sudden business trips, they were all carefully calibrated lies to ensure both worlds never touched. The darkest lie wasn't just that he cheated. It was that he built an entirely new foundation on my inheritance, using the very security I thought we shared to fund the life he truly wanted. I thought of our daughter, who believed her father was the paragon of masculine virtue. I thought of the countless times I defended Arthur to friends who thought he worked too much, too often. I realized that every memory we shared, every tender moment, was tainted by the knowledge that part of him belonged to someone else, someone he had to rush back to. The overwhelming complexity of this betrayal brought a deep question to the surface. When a spouse builds a secret life this vast and deep, Does it automatically invalidate everything that was good and genuine in the marriage? Was our love ever real, or was I simply the convenient manager of his primary facade? I want to ask those of you listening, if you discovered a secret life of this magnitude after 2 decades, would your first impulse be to confront the lie or to quietly walk away and protect your remaining dignity? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. The agony of knowing I was disposable fueled the ice that began to form in my veins. I returned home just after Arthur. He was sitting in the den, nursing a glass of Merlot, watching the evening news, the picture of domestic tranquility. He looked up, his smile warm and genuine, asking how my spa day was. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the wine glass. I walked straight to the safe, retrieved the anonymous letter, and walked back to the den. I didn't speak. I simply placed the letter on the mahogany coffee table in front of him, sliding it next to his glass. Then, I pulled out my phone and held up the single photograph I had taken, a blurry zoomed-in shot of the boy laughing by the swing set. His hazel eyes were unmistakable, luminous in the fading light. Arthur's face didn't drain of color. It collapsed. The muscles seemed to melt off his bones, leaving behind a terrified, exposed stranger. He didn't reach for the letter or the phone. He just stared at the image of his son Finn. "Eleanor," he whispered, his voice thick with sudden grief. Not for me, but for his ruined secret. I finally spoke, my voice low and brittle. "The Henderson mortgage. Tell me everything. Who is she, and who is he?" Arthur put his glass down, carefully, meticulously, as if that small act was the last vestige of his control. He confessed the boy, Finn, was 11, conceived during a business trip 11 years ago, a stupid, agonizing mistake with Sarah, a junior colleague. He claimed the affair ended quickly, but when Sarah realized she was pregnant, she refused an abortion. Arthur, raised Catholic, felt an obligation. He bought the duplex to give them a quiet life, far enough away to be hidden, close enough for him to be a father 3 nights a week. He swore it wasn't about love for Sarah, but duty to Finn. But the detail about the duty didn't matter. The lie did. The emotional betrayal was profound, but the financial truth was the razor wire that shredded my foundation entirely. After the initial wave of confession, Arthur tried to minimize the monetary cost. "It's just the mortgage, Eleanor. I still managed our accounts perfectly." That's when I pressed him on the source of the funding. The Henderson property wasn't paid for out of his bonus or a sudden windfall. He admitted, hesitantly, that he had pooled all his liquid funds after Finn was born, but needed a significant down payment to secure the duplex and guarantee Sarah's financial independence. That down payment, the critical amount that secured the separate life, came from the equity of my mother's small estate, the estate I had entrusted entirely to him after her death, believing it was untouchable, secured for our daughter's future education. He had systematically accessed and leveraged funds I believed were ring-fenced, transferring them under the guise of safe market diversification over a period of 18 months, using his legal authority as my spouse and trustee. The magnitude of the financial deception was breathtaking. It wasn't just that he had cheated. He had stolen the very security I had inherited and weaponized it against me to build a permanent monument to his infidelity. The property's current value, he admitted, was rapidly increasing, becoming the primary asset he managed, while the assets in our joint account were mostly tied up in highly volatile stocks, vulnerable to collapse. He hadn't just betrayed our marriage. He had strategically undermined my economic future, ensuring that should anything happen, Sarah and Finn would be financially protected while I was left exposed to market fluctuations and instability. The shock finally gave way to a chilling, analytical calm. I looked at Arthur, not as the man I loved, but as a dangerous opponent who had systematically exploited my trust for 2 decades. The time for emotion was over. Now it was time for strategy. I realized the greatest weapon I had was his total complacency and his belief that I was too naive or heartbroken to fight back effectively. I immediately contacted the sharpest divorce attorney I knew, a woman named Clara, known for her surgical precision in high-net-worth dissolution cases. I didn't tell her the whole story on the phone, only that I needed an emergency meeting and all documents related to the Henderson property and my mother's estate. Clara listened to the confession with detached professionalism, only raising an eyebrow when I revealed the use of the inheritance funds. She advised me not to file immediately. We needed to solidify my legal position, gather evidence of the undisclosed assets, and ensure I wasn't vulnerable to any retaliatory financial maneuvering Arthur might attempt. She pointed out that the existence of the anonymous letter implied someone outside our immediate circle knew about the betrayal and potentially the financial structure. That person, Clara argued, could be a critical witness or perhaps even the key to understanding Arthur's long-term intentions. I had to focus on resilience, on the quiet strength it takes to face a predator you once shared a bed with. I moved into the guest room that night, placing a cold, unbreakable boundary between us. Arthur pleaded. He cried. He begged for forgiveness. But his tears didn't move me. They were the tears of a man caught, not a man repentant. The next step was finding the source of the anonymous letter. Clara agreed that the messenger held the key to Arthur's true intent, beyond the vague claims of duty to his son. We hired a discreet private investigator specializing in digital forensics and anonymous correspondence tracing. It took 2 weeks of careful tracking, tracing the typewritten font and the postmark to a specific area near Arthur's downtown office. The investigator finally linked the cheap envelope and the typed message to a small private business center used primarily by Arthur's firm, specifically to a computer registered under the name of David Sterling, Arthur's longtime business partner and close friend. When confronted by Clara's firm, David didn't deny it. He was devastated and furious, but his motives were complex. David revealed that Arthur wasn't planning to stay with Sarah forever, or even with me. Arthur had been secretly positioning himself to liquidate a major portion of the company's assets after securing a massive new government contract, a contract that relied heavily on my family's historical political connections, and then intended to disappear entirely, taking the funds and relocating to Europe with Finn and Sarah under new identities. David, who had built the company alongside Arthur and had a clean conscience, realized Arthur's plan was not just infidelity, but a massive fraud that would destroy the business and compromise all their employees. He sent the letter not to save my marriage, but to blow up Arthur's exit strategy and protect his own reputation and the company's integrity. The realization that Arthur was not just a cheating husband, but a calculated thief and a potential corporate criminal solidified the ice around my heart. I was merely an obstacle to be managed, and the letter was my shield. Armed with David's testimony, the documented evidence of the fraudulent asset transfers, and Clara's meticulously prepared case, I finally filed for divorce. The shock of the legal papers landing on his desk was palpable. Arthur, who had been trying to win me back with pathetic displays of affection, realized his carefully constructed world was crashing down. Because we had the evidence of his strategic fraud and the use of the inheritance funds for the undisclosed property, we were able to secure the marital home and freeze several joint accounts immediately, preventing him from liquidating further assets. The legal battle was brutal, swift, and entirely devoid of love. I secured a resolution that protected my future, reclaiming the equity stolen from my mother's estate and ensuring our daughter's college fund was intact. Arthur was left with the Henderson property and his new family, but the professional consequences of David's cooperation meant his reputation and company suffered an irreparable blow. I didn't seek revenge. I sought justice, which often requires a colder, quieter strength than rage. The 20-year marriage ended, not with the passionate explosion of betrayal, but with the quiet, final sealing of envelopes. Healing isn't linear. But walking away from the darkest lie allowed me to see the true value of my own resilience. I was hurt deeply, irreparably, but I learned that the strongest walls are the ones we build around ourselves, powered by the truth we choose to face. Thanks everyone for watching. If you liked this, please subscribe to the channel Femme Fatale Files, leave a like, and write in the comments which country you are from. Stay tuned, there will be a new story tomorrow.